Hello everybody, James here to take 2, Ask Dutch Anything, episode 50-something. I've still not checked it. I had to give up on I never do 2 takes on intros, Dutch, you know that, don't you? I'm usually a 1-take chap.
You are a 1-take guy.
Yeah, that one just evolved into nothing. Anyway, we've got plugs for you. Books, 2 of them from Dutch himself, The World According to Dutch and Tales from a Dirt Road. If you want them unsigned, go to Amazon. If you want them signed, you email dirtydutchmantell with 2 L's at gmail.com and you make your request there. He also has diplomas for sale. He has a fresh one out of the printer, ready to show you. There you go. Well done, Shannon Wilburn. You're going to be the recipient of a University of Dutch one quite soon. And you also have a couple of hats left over as well, signed. So if you want a signed hat of the University of Dutch, you get involved at the same email address, dirtydutchmantell with 2 L's at gmail.com. I've got 2 books as well, one on Owen, Hart, one on The Rock. We've also got the Facebook page, Storytime with Dutch Mantell on Facebook. We also have Pro Wrestling Tees. Follow the links in the description. And also the Stevie Richards Show out every single Friday evening, my time, afternoon, your time, a few hours after Storytime with Dutch Mantell is broadcast. So, as I say, this is Ask Dutch Anything, and if you want to ask Dutch anything at all, then you email questions for Dutch at gmail.com, and the best questions make it into the script, and that's what everyone in this script does every single week. And the first one is from Stan, Dutch and James. Just wondering if it was ever difficult to go out with family, like to the malls or movies or eating out, etc., without fans bothering you, and how did the heels maintain kayfabe in those situations? Did fans bombard you with wanting autographs or wanting pictures made, or were any fans ever rude when you and your family are out in public? Your thoughts on it? Thanks for the podcast.
You know, my interaction with fans when I was out with my wife or my family, they were always very polite. They were always very nice. And sometimes, and the only time I didn't like to do that is when I'm in the process of eating. Hey, let me finish, guys, first. You know, and I would tell them that, and that would embarrass them. And they'd say, okay. I said, I'll get it after I finish when I'm leaving. And I was even when I was a heel babyface, because I always thought that without fans, I might be working a regular job. I wanted these people. And by wanting an autograph, that meant they were watching the show. They were interested in the product. Therefore, they might buy a ticket or they might buy some merchandise. But who knows? But where they were really obnoxious was at the airports, because they're not getting it because I'll say 75% of them, they're not getting it because they're just big fans, because they're reselling it. And they will come out there with an 8x10 picture. Where they got it, I don't know. They just had it run off for 59 cents or 89 cents. And they'd get you to sign it, but then immediately it would go up for sale somewhere for like $30 or $40. But see, I got none of that money. And they were kind of pushy and aggressive, and I've cussed a few of them out. And I'm not the only wrestler that did that, because when you go into the to the baggage area, you can see them. Now, in some baggage areas, you couldn't get in there unless you had a ticket. So they'd have to wait outside. But as soon as you left with your bags and all, they're right there. And not just 1 or 2 of them, but probably 15 or 20 of them. And they'll surround you without sticking. And then if you say, I can't sign it, I'm late. Well, you know, good son of a bitch. And that's when the cuss fights would start. But I usually try to maintain decorum and not be too much of an asshole. But some of those fans were very, very aggressive, to the point to where, you know, it pissed you off.
When you were a heel in wrestling, were you ever encouraged or at least discouraged from being nice to the fans? Or were you not nice to the fans when you were a heel, or did you just treat everyone like you want to be treated?
I treated them respectfully. You know, just because I'm a heel didn't mean I got to. See, if you say something to somebody that, you know, you shouldn't say, and as a heel, you would say that stuff. But, you know, that taints their memory of you forever. And it was just as easy to be saying, just say, if you're not going to sign anything, just say, I can't now. I'm in a hurry. Excuse me, and just keep going. They'll leave you alone. But if you say, get back, you little scumbag bastard, and I mean, that didn't win you any points. And I didn't feel like doing that. But like I said, some of them are very aggressive, and unless they get it signed, they get pissed off themselves.
Did any promoters have any specific guidelines for you as far as interacting with fans?
Yeah, well, some promoters years ago didn't want the heels to sign autographs because he said, and he had a point, they will start liking you. And if they start liking you, then some other more people, and over a period of time, you'll have your own little base out there. And he said, just let the baby faces sign and you guys just go on. Yeah, some of them did, but it didn't last long.
Was there I'm not even sure we've ever talked about this, even though it's like a fairly common thing, I guess people, maybe we have, I don't know. But the whole separating of baby faces and heels, separate locker rooms, separate hotels, separate bars you'd hang it out in. Obviously, at some point you'd end up in the same place, but what's the protocol for different territories as far as when you found yourself, after hours in the same place as people from the opposite locker room? So the fans wouldn't, twig.
Well, if you went out afterwards to a bar, you could be in a place, maybe only one bar would be open, and the heels and baby faces would be in there at the same time. You just don't interact with each other. And of course, the fans are going to come up and say, so-and-so's over there. Or, they was expecting to see a fight, I guess. I don't know. But we never really had that problem. Memphis, they didn't want you in the same hotels. They didn't want you there because they know that if you're in the same hotel and you get to drinking, you may have your opponent in your own room and you're drinking together with some other people, and they didn't like that. And in some places, it would get you fired. In Memphis at one time, that if you was, now it wasn't this way when I was there, but I heard that if you pulled up to a convenience store to get you something to drink, and your opponent was inside, you weren't allowed to go inside till he left. And I said, that's a little bit too stringent for me. But they did have rules like that, so they tried to keep kayfabe as much as they could.
Next question. Tyson says, hello, Dutch and James. I'm all for Mandy Rose's return to WWE, I guess. I always thought Hunter, Triple H, or Vince was dumb for firing her over her OnlyFans. If it was the Attitude Era or Ruthless Aggression Era, they wouldn't have cared, like Tori Wilson doing Playboy. Mandy was making too much money doing OnlyFans than what she was making on the road. Do you think she will return full-time or not? So you remember this chick from last year? Yep. She did the OnlyFans, making $1 million a month at one point briefly.
Why would she want to go back to wrestling? Why would she want to go back there and travel and put up with that bull crap when she could make all that money and not leave her house? See, I think the OnlyFans, if you get a name in something, you're going to have all your fans, especially females, going to this OnlyFans place and paying whatever it is, $5, $10 or whatever, for you to perform or do whatever you do. I've never been on there. So as a guest or as a patron, I've never even seen OnlyFans. I've just heard of it. But she made how much money?
The first month she supposedly made $1 million. I'll tell you what, right, Dutch, if you gave...
Do you believe that?
I sort of do. There's a lot of saddos out there who, can't find all this stuff for free, apparently. Okay, but here's the thing, right, Dutch? If someone came to me and said, I'm going to give you $1 million or £1 million, whatever, to get your wood out on camera, and I'd be like, you would never see me podcasting again. Do you know what I mean?
So you would get your wood out for the world to see.
You don't want to know what I'd do for $1 million, Dutch, let me tell you.
Well, yeah, that is true.
But you wouldn't go back to it, is what I'm saying. It's like, oh, okay, here's $1 million for just this absolutely low effort, low rent. I mean, you've got to sell your soul and your dignity somewhat. But $1 million is $1 million. You wouldn't go back to podcasting or wrestling or whatever it is.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah, but I'd only have a one-time appearance there. Actually, they saw my little Woody.
You need
that's a lot of money for a little bit of real estate.
You need to have like a 12-month subscription minimum, so you've got them for a year.
At least.
Yeah.
So my fans are OnlyFans.
Well, it's OnlyFans, but I think Mandy Rose is actually using an off-brand OnlyFans. There's more than one of these websites that caters to the...
Is she still doing it?
I figure so, yeah. But she seems to just be sneaking a tiny bit back into wrestling here and there. So I think there was an immediate fascination, and then it'll have died off pretty quickly, I bet.
Well, more power to her. So...
Next question. Thomas, hey Dutch, I enjoy the podcast, so I've always been a huge fan of Eddie Guerrero. If he were alive today, what do you think his role would be? Maybe another run as champ, maybe have him be a part of the Judgment Day, or maybe just have him behind the scenes. Your thoughts on Eddie in general would be great. Thank you. Did you wrestle Eddie? Because I know you wrestled his brothers at times, didn't you?
Yeah, I wrestled his brothers. I never wrestled Eddie, I don't think. I was in Puerto Rico with him. He came down, when he got suspended in WWF, I guess. He took some, and he came down for about a month, and I was around him then, but I think he was having a really, really hard time doing that because he was kind of in his own world, and he wasn't very talkative. And he wasn't unfriendly, but he was not over-friendly. And because I think his mind was somewhere else.
Well, he might have been going through withdrawal at the time because he got suspended due to drugs, and he had to clean up his act.
Well, if he got suspended for drugs, Puerto Rico was probably the place he did not want to be. That was the worst place for him to be. He could walk out on every street corner, anywhere on the island almost, and find it. You could even go to the drugstore and get, somas, the codeine pills or whatever. That was over the counter. You didn't even have to have a prescription. So if you had a drug problem, don't go to Puerto Rico, or don't go there, because you'd have a worse problem, when you returned. So if Eddie was in the business today, first of all, I think he's past his working years, but I do think he would make a great, not a manager, but a advisor or consultant type to a Spanish heel. And then you could tell a great story about that, because he was a good talker. And he could go out there and I think he would be good for maybe a year and a half, and then let him ease off. And he would be the type to have a retirement match. And I think it would draw well. Eddie Guerrero was just tremendous. He was a tremendous talent. He had a tremendous head for the business. And the people loved him. And of course, Bradshaw told me all about Eddie, because he had that run with him, and man, he was great.
I had no idea that you booked Eddie, sort of probably about his darkest period as well.
Well, I booked him, but Carlos told me what to put him in. I guess he got booked through Carlos. He didn't call me.
Well, what did he do? Did he just do a series of matches, run a program?
Yeah, just matches.
So no little program with anyone working there?
Well, he was only there a month. He came in and said, I'll make May 1st to June 1st. And, I'll do 4 weeks. And Carlos kind of booked him. That's who he had to deal with. So I just stayed out of the way.
So nothing overly creative that you would have,
Well, but if he was in, like you said, in withdrawal, I don't know how effective he would have been. But he wasn't the Eddie that I knew before. I knew him before, not close, but this Eddie was different.
When was the first time you met Eddie then? I don't know.
I
Was
think
he
Houston.
WCW briefly, or?
He was, I think. I think I met him in Houston the first time because the Guerreros, they were over huge in Texas, just big time over. And when he got to WWE, he had the personality to go with his talent, and he was over like Rover, as they say. So you didn't have to do anything with him that much because the people were already behind him, and he was a great heel too.
Next question from Cheryl. Have you ever experienced, quote unquote, white heat? The kind of silent crowd reaction where you know that if you do anything more to rile up the crowd, a riot is likely to break out.
Now, I don't know where that term, who is this wrote this?
Cheryl has said.
Okay, I mentioned white heat not too long ago. And white heat, and I don't think you'll see it today, but it's when the people are so involved in an outcome or an angle that when you do something to that good guy, that baby face, and it's time for you to go, they're not screaming and hollering. They just standing there looking at you. That's white heat because it's gone beyond just the cheering stage. And I mean, they're still saying stuff, but when they quieten down, they're thinking about what to do. So that is a very dangerous time. And an old time booker told me about it one time. He said, listen to the people. And they quietened down. They had this wild angle going on. Then they quietened down. He said, that's white heat. That's what you want to stay away from. He said, that's when they're the most dangerous. And I learned from that and I always remembered that if you see the fans getting out of control, it's time to leave. Get out of there.
Were you, we'll talk about famous examples later, but were you ever in the ring when a bout of white heat was about to break out and you knew you had to get out there?
Yeah, Puerto Rico.
Well, right, but did they do white heat then? Because I always imagine Puerto Rico, screaming and hollering all the time, and then you just get two round bunches. But at some points, would they just go silent if it got too crazy?
Not silent, but they will quieten down because they were thinking about. They know the way you have to come out, so they're just quietening down. They said, "Okay, I'll get him when he comes by." So I was in one angle there, and it was Roberto Clemente Coliseum. It seats about 18,000. It's a big arena. They probably had 20 in there that night. It was jam-packed. And I remember we had a barbed wire match, but the commission, for some reason, they want to throw their weight around. And they came in and said, well, you can't have a barbed wire around the ring. It's too barbaric. So they took the barbed wire to the ring, but they never put it up because we started the match before they started putting it up. And then we went and went and went. And I remember they beat us. They won the match, the baby faces. And then when we went to leave, whoosh, all the people were there waiting on us. And we had, I think, 8 cops around us. And I got punched about, not 10 times, but about 6 times through the cops because you couldn't stop and get each person because then you leave a gap and somebody else fills in. It was very dangerous in Puerto Rico because we had so much heat on us. And I'm thinking now, I made a lot of money in Puerto Rico, especially during that period, but I don't know if it was worth all the danger that I put myself in. I got a check one time in Puerto Rico, and this was $1979. And I had worked 4 days or 4 dates the preceding week, and I got $4,600 for 4 shots. And what would that be in today's money?
I knew you'd ask me that, so I'm just looking at an inflation calculator. I think we've checked it before. So hang on,
about 3 times, right? 4 times.
It's probably more actually. So hang on, just give us a second. So what was it? 4,400.
46.
Sorry, 4,600. I know we've got a video out there where we've done this before, but we've not done it in a while. So.
Yeah, I remember doing it before.
Hang on. So just to round, I think, to July 2024 is $19,929. So round it up, call it 20.
Yeah, that's not bad for 4 days work. And I got a check the following week for $4,400, and I wanted to go in the office and accuse them of scamming me. Hey, you screwed me out of my money. What the hell? So,
well, good work if you can get it, though. I think I'm not sure we've ever talked about White Heat before, though, but I know we've talked about riots and fan riots and that kind of thing. Do you know any examples? Because I'm going to think of one, and it's when Bruno Sammartino lost the title to Ivan Koloff in, 69? I can't remember the year. 69, late 60s, I guess. And the fans didn't cheer or boo or anything. They just went, huh. To the point that they were scared to announce Ivan as the winner. They just left.
I didn't make White Heat up. It's a condition that really exists. Rarely, they don't do this a lot, but rarely it exists. So if they were afraid to announce that Ivan Koloff was the winner, even the announcer knew how they were. Mm-hmm. Now, another time White Heat came into play was the Anderson brothers, Gene and Ole. They had so much heat on them one time, and they were selling out everywhere. I remember they went to, I think it was Greenville, South Carolina. And I wrote a story about this in my book. They had so much heat. They did something. I forgot who the big Steamboat. I think they had a Steamboat. They attacked him or something, left him laying. And when they were trying to leave, one guy reached through the cops and he cut Ole from here. I said this all the way down. Did like 70 stitches to close him up. So, and what they did to the guy, they arrested him, took him in, and he had a hearing on it or a court date on it. And Ole didn't even go. But anyway, the judge sentenced him to a year in jail, suspended. But one of the things that he couldn't do, he couldn't go to the wrestling matches ever again. And he died about a year later. He was 76 years old. So if he couldn't go to the wrestling matches, I guess in his mind, what's the purpose of living? And he died about a year later. And that's a sad story, and I hate to hear that. But, and we talk about wrestling all the time, wrestling fans, but some people just live for it. And, I mean, we had it back in the days when we was in those towns every week. It'd always be the same people in the ringside seats week after week after week. And you saw them so much, they actually became kind of your friends. So you see them out there, and if it turned to bad, they would at least try to help you as much as they could. But the ones you had to watch were the one in the cheap seats, because they would come down the ringside, and you could spot them. But what you were scared of is the knives, because the knife is straight out. They could go beside in front of a cop and stick you. So, yeah, I've been in several instances like that. Not fun, by the way.
Next question, Dazza. Hi, James and Dutch. Which wrestler do you think WWE paid the most doing a full-time schedule, past or present? Thanks, Darren. So I've written some ideas. So he says full-time. Who do you think's the most well-paid?
Well, right now it'd be Roman Reigns.
He's not full-time.
Right now.
He's not full-time. Brock Lesnar's not full-time. Roman Reigns isn't full-time. So full-time out there, who do you think is best paid? I'm figuring either Cody or Randy Orton.
Well, I'd say Cody. What do you think Cody is making?
Do you know, I'm going to stick my neck out here. I haven't seen either of the contracts. It's a complete guess, but I would actually guess, because Randy Orton renegotiated very recently and Cody jumped back from AEW in 2022, I bet that Randy Orton makes more. Not from merchandise, because that'll be a huge subsidy, of course. But I think as a downside guarantee, I guess, Randy,
it's not a subsidy. That's added into your actual contract. You don't really get any money from the gimmicks, what I call the gimmicks, the merchandise. That's added into your total contract. So you're making $3 million, but you sell $2 million in merchandise. Well, that's mostly your contract. Now, if you go over that, you get it. But until you reach that $3 million mark in earnings, you're just making the same every week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering, did you ever find out how much Lawler made or Jerry Jarrett made from Memphis back in the day?
Say a $20,000 house. That's an average house. Not an average, but 15 to 20. And the wrestling business had a rule of thirds. A third to run the show, pay the expenses, pay the building, do all that stuff, do the setup, and a third to rent the building. That's what that's supposed to take care of. A third to the talent, and a third to the promotion. But the deal is, see, the talent never sees. He never. You never see the total. You never see the total. All you have to go on is by what the promoter tells you. And I've had a lot of promoters. I said, "Man, this is better than last week." And the guy said, "Oh, no. We gave out a lot of free tickets." What? All of a sudden, why would you give out free tickets when we have this angle that's damn almost selling out? Why would you do that? But so actually, the promoter probably, instead of getting 30%, he'd probably get 40%, and then the talent would only get 20%. And say you had and it's just mathematics. Say you have 16 guys on the card and a referee. You just say you got out of 20,000. What is 20% of 20,000? $4,000.
Mm-hmm.
And you just divide 17 into $4,000 and come up with an average payoff. And then you go up from there to the main event, and then you take away from the bottom.
I was trying to think of a couple more people. I mean, there's a lot of people in modern wrestling that is full-time, but it's barely full-time compared to what it used to be. I understand that. But I was also thinking for inflation, Hulk Hogan in WCW, even though he wasn't full-time either, but he's probably wrestling as much in WCW that people are wrestling now. And he was making, adjusted for inflation in 1998, something like $12.5 million a year.
Mm.
He's making crazy money.
Crazy.
Let's move on. Timothy says, hello, Dutch and James. I was wondering if you had any interesting comments or stories about Jonathan Boyd of the Sheephearders. Also, what, if any, difference was there between working with or dealing with the team, with and without Boyd as a member? I remember his running world class with Rip Morgan and Jack Victory just prior to the Bushwhackers WWF run. Appreciate your thoughts on the topic. So, Jonathan Boyd.
Well, I met him first in Atlanta when we were an opposition group to the regular NWA outfit they had in town. And I think Jonathan Boyd came out, and who did he mention there? His partner, what was his name? The other guy?
He said his running world class with Rip Morgan and Jack Victory.
Okay. Well, I met him, and Butch, cousin Butch, or Butch Miller wasn't with him. I met him in Puerto Rico. And I don't really know Jonathan, but he was a hell of a talker. I made a trip with him one day. I don't think he took time to breathe. And boy, he can talk, and he was telling me one thing. He said he can make an angle out of anything, but he did have the right idea. He said you could take, say, a baseball cap and make the baseball cap the hallmark of the angle. Guy's got a hat on. He said, the other guy slaps it off. He said, don't do that again. He said, or what? He said, well, you'll find out. And he slaps the hat off again. Now they got an angle because he disrespected him. And so he said, I can make an angle out of anything. And he's booked a few places, and I think he did well because he gave everybody a reason for them to be in a beef with another guy, and they had good matches, and the people were entertained. And I think he was look him up. He was in Portland for a while, right? And I think they did very well in Portland.
Let me have a look. He was part of the Royal Kangaroos for a good long time. Singles run, New Sheephearders. Because Butch Miller, I think there we go. He decided he wanted to return home and relocate to Australia. So he sort of just left cousin Luke over in the States for quite a while. Yeah.
Right.
So Luke remained in America. Butch went back to Australasia at least.
Now, when was it that Jonathan Boyd died? At WrestleMania 2 years ago?
Jonathan Boyd? No, he died in 1999. Are you talking Butch?
No, I'm talking... who am I talking about?
I think you're talking about cousin Butch. Butch Miller. You're talking about Butch Miller. He died a year or two ago, yeah.
That was him. Okay. I got him confused, but he was the one that, he could make an angle out of anything. But he was a good guy, good worker, always treated me well, even though I was just a greenhorn.
Next question is Jerry. Hi, Dutch. I have a quick question about wrestling veterans. Specifically, which wrestling legends have you personally witnessed being the most giving to the young guys as far as advice, willing to work with them, not being jealous if they rise to the top, etc.? Thank you.
Most of them, and they will tell you, they call you kid. Kid, I started out, and I remember when I started, and you'd come back, and some of them would watch your matches on purpose, and you'd come back, and they'd call you over and say, do this and do that. But most of them were very, very helpful and very giving in sharing their knowledge of wrestling and helping you out. So, and they would just give you a little bit each night. I mean, not overdo it. I mean, they had no interest in you. They had no vested interest whether you got better or not. They did it because of their love for the game, their love of wrestling, and that's why they were in it. And they like to see it done well. And a lot of them helped me for no reason at all, just to be helpful. And I appreciated that.
I know there's you mentioned names well, Tom Renesto, Jody Hamilton and stuff like that. Can you think of any other names that we might not immediately think of who would help you in your early career?
Killer Carl Cox, he helped me out a lot in Florida. I would drive with him. And a great, great storyteller. We were in West Palm Beach one Monday night. They ran it on Mondays. And I'm waiting on him because he was in the main event or semifinal, but he was going back into the main event to help some heel, I forgot. And he went out, and boy, the people, they stood up. They hated him. He was a hateful looking bastard anyway. He didn't have to say nothing. You just didn't like him at all. He was half bald headed, but tough. And I saw after he went down and came back, I saw two guys laying in the aisleway. They couldn't get up because he had he put his hands in like this and he just straightened them out. Bam. Somebody over there. Bam. I called it, or he called it, the 6-inch punch because he didn't wind up and throw it. He just come straight out. He knocked them out. And he was tough. Very, very good guy. And of course, Tom Ernesto helped me a lot. And Jody Hamilton. That was in my early days. But most of them that, after 2 years, you don't really need that much help. So this is in my first 6 months or the first year. And here's another one that the name you haven't heard in a long time, if you ever even heard it at all, was Dickie Steinborn. You ever heard about him?
You brought his name up before on the show.
He was like one of the most athletic wrestlers at that point that I'd ever seen. If I had to compare him to somebody today, I'd say Bryan Danielson. because he had that thing of making it look real, and he could really get the people on his side, and great worker. So, and he helped me a lot too.
I heard a story, I don't know if it was a Kevin Nash story or someone else, but apparently someone went up to Jerry Lawler and said, hey man, I know how great you are, and probably in the WWF, and we've got a match tonight, and I'm just hoping to get a bit of that knowledge of yours, and Jerry Lawler's response was, F you, dude, I've been working at this 25 years, figure it out for yourself.
It sounds like Lawler.
Why wasn't Jerry... Okay, right, so he would bring in people who had absolutely no business being in the ring and put them over, and they'd win the USWA title or whatever for 3 weeks because they were a monster, and then they'd switch it back and then they move on to the next one. How can he be so unhelpful to someone asking him for advice and then so helpful to a complete no-hoper for the most part, just to get through a match for a couple of weeks?
You tell me. Why would you even do that? I mean, I could never bring myself to do that. If a kid came up to me and says, hey, can you help me? Well, I'm going to help him. I can't help myself. Why would I be a smart ass to him and say, hey, I've been in this business, blah, 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 and why would I help you and this, that, and the other? That's just being, hey, this guy didn't buy a ticket. He's not a fan. So you're working with the guy. And from now on, this guy is going to have that image of you in his head. So when your name gets brought up in another group discussion somewhere and you're not there, he's going to say, he's an asshole. He's a dickhead. So, and I don't want to be remembered like that. I would rather help a guy. And if I could help him, I'd help him. So, because later on they say, well, what kind of guy was Dutch? And he said, oh, he was a good guy. He helped me out. But what if he said, boy, he was a big time dickhead? So I don't know. I just wasn't that way, but that does sound like Jerry Lawler. And he probably didn't even mean it, but that's the way he came off.
Next question. AMC says, hey, Dutch, hope all is well. My question is, did you like wrestling in Tulsa and Oklahoma City?
Not no. But hell, no, I did like Tulsa and Oklahoma City because we did them back to back on a Sunday. Now, once you got to the shows, that's one thing. It's getting back, because guess how far it was to where I lived in Louisiana.
Oh, you actually moved to Louisiana when you were
Mid-South? No, yeah. You lived in Louisiana. I lived in Alexander City or something like that.
Did everyone live in Louisiana as a base when they worked Mid-South?
Who?
Did everybody, when they worked Mid-South, did they use Louisiana as a base?
And you tried to get the center in Alexandria. I think it was Alexandria, Louisiana, yeah. Oh, it was like 390 miles from Oakland. And you did Tulsa early in the day. Then you did Oklahoma City at night. So, hey, did I send you that tape of me and Butch Reed at Tulsa at the outdoor deal?
No, you didn't.
Oh, it was 105 degrees that day. It was hotter than hell. But I'll send it to you. But when you left Oklahoma City, I was glad I would be on, I wanted to be on first, but they usually put me on like fifth. They only have 7 matches. They put me on fifth. So I wouldn't get out of there to like at least 10 o'clock, 10:30. And when you make that trip 400 miles south at night, oh my God, it was, and I thought, I said, this is how I'm going to die. I'm going to die on these roads, because they had interstates, but they had interstates like from Jackson down to New Orleans. But the rest of them had 2-lane highways. So you were on 2-lane highways going through those towns at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was, one time I was so tired. I was by myself. I don't know why. I just slammed my brakes on and locked the car down in the road, because I thought I saw some deer in front of my car. There's nobody there. I was just seeing stuff. So then I went to the next town. I found a parking lot and that was lit up a little bit. I had to go to sleep, or I wouldn't have made it home. But did Bill Watts give a crap? Hell no, because he wasn't making the damn trip. And we made that trip every 2 weeks. So it was, and that was the problem with Louisiana. It was a great territory. It's just that the miles beat you to death. I don't know how Jake the Snake or Teddy, what's his name? Teddy what?
Oh, DiBiase.
DiBiase. I don't know how, and they made it for years. And I don't know how they made it that long. No wonder when damn Vince come calling, they said, hell yeah, I'll go, just to get away from these trips. And Duggan, he made them too. And it was Butch Reed, all those guys.
Who was Bill Watts's like second, you know, the guy who would go on the road with you and handle the money and bring it back and that kind of thing?
It was Jake the Snake's father, I think.
Oh, it was Grizzly Smith.
Grizzly Smith. That's who it was. And this was before I knew of Grizzly's reputation. He was an odd duck and a big, big guy too. He was about 6'9", 6'10". He was a big, big fella. And you've heard the stories about him, right?
Oh, yeah, we've talked about them before. Don't worry. We shall move on. Henry says, we need a watch-along and commentary. Dutch at his best. And he has sent a video link. So give me 1 second. I'll cue it up and we'll watch it together. So here we go. We're going to skip the first few minutes. So Lawler's out here sort of challenging you. And then let's just have you come out and then we'll see what's going on.
Between Jerry the King Lawler and Dutch Mantell. Well, speaking of Lawler, here he comes out right now. We had some footage we want to talk to you about. We'll wait and see. Here.
Oh, this is right at the beginning. I'm sorry.
Probably not right, but I could be wrong. I'll admit I could be wrong. Probably
might be different. At that time, he was obviously irritated.
See the bad guy here, because I couldn't quite gauge who was the heel and who was the baby face.
No, we had no heel and we had no baby face. We were both baby faces.
Well, there's the Dutchman.
We got into an argument.
He chose not to come out here, but I see that he does have the guts to come out. Just have a seat, Dutch. Now, let me say one thing. I'm not afraid of you.
You're a mohair
And I am a
sweater.
man. Now, what do you want with me? All I want you to do is sit down in that chair right there and watch this film with me and about 350,000 other people and explain to me why you did what you did. Can you do want me to sit down? Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay, now let's just...
So we're going to get to the video itself. So, bear with me.
So he beats me and my foot was on the ropes. And he didn't see it. Then a bunch of guys run in and start beating the crap out of him.
Jimmy Hart and the First Family, and there you go. You walk off, slink away, and do not help. So,
and the reason he asked me why I didn't help him, I said, hell, I didn't make those enemies. Those are your enemies.
I'm gonna tell you, why should I help you? I don't see what you got to be so hot about. You got the Southern Belt. Now, I didn't contract to fight your battles. Now, I didn't make all these enemies that you made. Now, you might swerve some people into thinking you're a king, but you ain't swerving me, Jack, because I knew you back when.
You've never called me Jack.
You ain't swerving
Jack.
Dutch. No, you got it. You got it. Let me say one thing. Now, you came out here and you ran me down, and not once did you say I was a good wrestler, did he, Lance? Not once did you say I was a good wrestler. Not once
Lance
did you
is
say
great.
that I was a good competitor. You said a lot of things, a lot of insults, and a lot of accusations. Now, you may not have been listening to what I said before. I want to wrestle you for this belt, but I want to do it on my time, my term. Now, you can't sock me out.
Which of those matches, because I know you had a 3-match series, was that 1, 2, or 3?
But you're not socking me out, and when it gets ready for the
3 is
time,
coming up.
The time is right, I'm gonna come
But see,
back
Lawler
after
wanted me to
How
get
long
back
is
in
it
the
gonna
ring
take?
with him.
What's the time going to be? You're right, I didn't say you was a good wrestler. I said you're a coward, Dutch Mantell. I said you're yellow. I said you're
That
chicken
bastard.
to get in the ring with me. I'm giving you
Lawler.
a shot at this belt, and you won't take it. You know why? You know why you won't take it? The same reason you showed on that film. You didn't want to jump in there and help me because you were afraid those guys would kick your butt. And you're afraid I'll kick your butt. That's why you won't get in the ring with me. I'm going to say one more thing. Let me say one more thing. I said I wanted to be a friend of yours. Win, lose, or draw. But you made that impossible. Not me, Lawler. You made it impossible. Not me, Jack. And I'm not going to sit out here in front of 350,000 people and let you run me down. So you're not going to wrestle me because you're a coward. Why don't you just say that? No, I'll tell you what I do. Hey, I'm not going to sit out here and listen to it. All you got to do is say you're a coward. All you got to do is say you're a coward.
Uh-oh, see, he did it.
That wasn't too bad of a slap. That wasn't an Andy Kaufman slap there.
There we go. Oh, he slapped Kaufman so hard. That was a pretty hard slap there, too, by the way. And this drew money, big time money. Now, you see when those people come out to help, they actually pull us apart. In WWE, they don't pull the guys apart. They just say, hey, get back, get back, get back. And when we did go together, it was another sellout.
How come it ended so quickly then? So it was only three-match card, three-match series and then done.
And I brought, well, I'll tell you why we ended it. Because this was right before the Andy Kaufman angle.
Really?
Right before, and the Kaufman angle did great. So when it came in, we let that we closed it down, and we went back to it a year or two later, but it wasn't the same.
So it just, something else came up, and then that was it, basically, then?
Yeah, I think Andy was sending in his videotapes, and I was wondering where it was going to. See, I was as big a fan for Andy Kaufman as the fans were, because I deliberately did not want to know what they were going to do. Because it's fun to sit, and I've never done this in wrestling, but I've sit back. Well, I did in WWE, but I wasn't really as invested in their angles as I was with Andy Kaufman and Lawler. I deliberately went out of my way to not know the finish, because I wanted to look at it as a fan would look at it, and I was highly, highly entertained. And when we finally did Tales from the Territories for Vice TV, I thought they had a set finish for it, and I found out that they didn't even have the finish. Lawler told him, he said, let's just go and play it by ear. You know, when Lawler gave him the suplex back and he laid there and he wouldn't get up, and he called the ambulance, Andy made that up on the spot. And they got a little mad at him because we're not going to pay another $250 for an ambulance to make a call out here to pick you up. And he told Calhoun, the referee, tell Jerry I'll pay for it. But that's what made the angle. Then when they carted him out, and he had so much heat, the people were on the second tier, they were still throwing stuff down on him while he laid on the gurney. And there's an old picture of Jim Cornette before he got into wrestling, was right there with Andy, you know, had his camera around his neck and taking pictures.
I think on the wrestling bit, he was, that we just saw on that video as well. I think Jim Cornette was at the ringside there as well.
Maybe, because he was a big fan for it too. So Andy, and I think Andy died like a year after this. And I think he had such a desire to be a wrestler, because he was even doing it on his TV show, like it was Saturday Night Main Event or Saturday Night Live. He'd be a guest comedian, and he wasn't funny, but he would go out there and he would do it, and you would think, why in the hell would they put him on this show? And then he ended up wrestling women. The intergender championship. Oh, it was hilarious. He would do it at Memphis. So, and he was over, and the people, and when the movie came out that they really, what was the name of the movie that they did about it?
Man on the Moon.
Man on the Moon. And when they let that out, that it was all set up, I think it broke people's hearts. I really do. I think they wanted to go through with that, thinking that this is one thing they saw that was real in wrestling. And there was no need to. I mean, the people believed it was real then, because they wanted Lawler to kill him. And I was thinking, what qualified a New York kid like Andy, that weighed in maybe 160 pounds, pasty white, skinny, greasy hair, pimples on his face, that wore long johns and tennis shoes in the ring. What qualified him to be in the main event at the Memphis Coliseum? And one thing qualified him to be there. You know what it was? He had sold 11,175 tickets to fill the building up. And that's what qualified him to be in the main event. And, you know, when he would come in the dressing room, hell, it was like he was the big star. And he was just as meek, like almost like he was afraid to say something. He was a much bigger star than we could ever hope to be. But yet he came in with such reverence for wrestlers, and he would just sit back and just as meek as he could be and just as nice. But anyway, Andy Kaufman, to me, I'll have nothing but fond memories of him because he was a great, great human being. And I didn't cry when he passed away, but I did really feel bad for him because he had cancer, right?
Yeah, lung cancer. It was because he was a lifelong non-smoker, so it was curious that he got it.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you perform, you know, because everyone could smoke indoors back then, so secondhand smoke could have caused it, or it could have just been a weird genetic mutation. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what it was. But he was really a good guy. He really was.
Okay, I think we've only got time for one, maybe two. We'll see how long this goes, but probably only one. Edward has written in and says, "Hello, Dutch and James. Hope all is well with the both and love your show." Thank you. My question for Dutch is back when he had the run as manager of Jack Swagger. A lot of us remember the run-in they had with Glen Beck. I remember seeing the promo where you guys cut a bit in character and then introduce yourselves as the real people like Jake Hager and Wayne Cowan, and explained that it's all a show and acting. It's not every day you see performers having to break character to defend themselves or the company. I was curious, who was it in the company that this is something that needed to be done? Did it come from Vince himself, and was the whole controversy squashed immediately after the promo? Thanks for answering.
Well, I don't know whose idea it was, but Glen Beck, just to show you that you can make wrestling fans out of almost anybody if you come out there with a legitimate character and personality. And they said we were making fun of the Tea Party, I guess, but we weren't. But I think a lot of people were feeling this at the time, that we were out defending America and people were trying to tear it down, and we were real Americans and we didn't like foreigners. We didn't like this. But when Glen Beck, we challenged him to come on the show, WWE flipped their lid over that. Oh, Glen Beck is going to come on? Oh, and they would have figured out something. I'd have probably end up down Glen Beck beating the crap out of me. But of course, he refused to come on. But we took him on there and put the blue screen behind us and said, Glen, this is what we do. My name is not Zeb Colter. I'm Wayne Cowan from wherever, South Carolina. And this is
an apartment in Kentucky, Dutch.
Oh, yeah, that's what he said. And we kind of went out and trolled him back, and we never heard any more from him. But they got a lot of press off that, and that's what they wanted to get. Because, see, the first night I went out there, I was in Nashville, because they called me and they had this idea they wanted to do with Swagger to make him the real American and somebody that could talk. And they had tried Jimmy Golden, who actually portrayed Jack's father. And they tried, I think they was thinking about trying to do Robert Fuller, but they thought that he was too much of a showman, and so they got down to me. And I showed up in Nashville around 4:00. Went in there and talked to them. They wanted me to do one interview to show Vince, and they give me the interview. And I went in there and I showed up at 4:30. Did the interview at 5:30. Vince saw the tape at 6:30, and I got hired at 6:45. That's the quickest hire, I think, in WWE history. And I remember at the end, somebody told me to say what I was in there, say "we the people." And I said "we the people." And that's what popped him, I think. But then he hired me on the spot. And I went out there and got in the ring that night. And it was weird because the people knew me there as Dutch Mantell. And I said, now he's doing, but they kind of got it at the end. And then when I finally told the people from that point on, please, I want every real American in the sound of my voice to please rise, put your hand over your heart, and in a loud, clear voice, say along with me, "We the people." Everybody did it. And they told me, "Oh, you're going to have so much heat." But I didn't have heat. Actually, I was a half baby face. People were supporting me, and they didn't know what to do with it. And I give them a few ideas. Of course, they overlooked that. So, but anyway, that's how it came about. And I'm kind of happy about my run as Zeb Colter. Jack was doing nothing at the time. I remember I told Jack one time, I said, when you get in the ring, start screwing around with those people a bit. He said, "Oh, they told me not to do it." I said, "I don't give a shit what they told you. Do it." So he did it. The people started responding. Now he's getting immediate feedback from it. And then he went on. See, they would tell Jack stuff and they never would say nothing to me. They never would try to critique me or anything because I knew more than they knew, and they didn't want to come in there. And I did get in a discussion one night with one of the writers saying I was going to say this about the Constitution and this, that, and the other. I said, Zeb Colter wouldn't say this. They said, "Oh, Vince wants you to say it." I said, "I don't think Vince wants me to say this. I really don't." They said, "Well, you want to go see him?" I said, "Yeah, let's go see him." And he come back and said, "Oh, no, Vince is busy right now." "Okay, what do you want to say?" And then he changed it. So he wanted me to say something that was almost, I mean, if I was a real American, I would know the Constitution, even though I was a heel. So, and that writer, I think he got let go about, I don't know, a month or two after that.
It's funny, I never considered that you'd actually you actually made your debut as Zeb Colter in Nashville.
I did.
All places where they would know you more than anyone as Dutch Mantell, pretty much, apart from Memphis, I guess. Or
and
San
then
Juan.
they called me the next day. They had Memphis the next day. "Can you make Memphis?" I said, "Well, it's about 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock. I said, "I can." But he said, "We can't get you a ticket. You'll have to drive." I said, "Okay." So I drove down and made Memphis the next day. Same stuff. And that's how it took off. Then they hired me full time. And then they called me in there, and I worked out my contract, my money, and everything in a little bit of a room in the back of the Nashville Civic Center or whatever it is, Bridgestone Arena.
One more thing about the Glen Beck thing is, do you remember any particular reaction? Because I remember it was a fairly big deal, at least on the internet and the reporting and everything, when you did essentially what was that kayfabe breaking segment. But what was the reaction to it internally? Did some people think it was a great idea or a bad idea? Because it really was fourth wall breaking, even in that era.
I never heard anybody say anything about it. I thought, it was punching through the fourth wall. But see, back in those days, the guys didn't say shit, excuse my language, because it wasn't their job to say anything. So if they said something, they may have thought it was getting a little bit out of line and they were above their pay grade in saying that. And I just went in there and did what they told me to do. I didn't think it was for, see, I could always say, "Oh, I just made that crap up." I guess, I don't know. I did what they told me to do.
And on that basis, I'm telling you that this show is over. So we have reached our 1 hour thing. That is kind of an arbitrary time that we try and stick to for the best of, but it's also
Hey,
nice
this
to
was a
get
good
hungry.
show.
It bounced by, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And I got to run my mouth and just call. I like to tell stories just as they come up. And because that's when you get to, and then again, the story could change because that's what happens with wrestlers. They could tell the same story and then it changes a little bit. You said, no, you said last time, I didn't say that. Well, I did said that, but I meant this. And it's just good conversation. It makes the trip go by shorter. So a lot of people write me and they say, I had a truck driver write me. He says, it makes the miles go by fast. This is because I'm listening to you guys talk, and I try to imagine what it would be like in a car full of wrestlers. But anyway, he said, it makes my time go by, and I appreciate it. And I thank that. I thank the guy.
On that basis, then, on Friday, we will help your time go by a little quicker or a little more smoothly for another 2 hours when Storytime with Dutch Mantell, episode 116, either airs or doesn't air, depending on whether my wife gives birth. So, on that basis, we don't know what's going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. Well, you might be doing guests for a couple of weeks without me. So, that's sort of what we're thinking might happen if you can wrangle the software, which is pretty easy. I mean, we've gone through it enough times. You should be fine.
What he's talking about, ladies and gentlemen, he gave me the rundown of how to do this show by myself.
I made them bespoke for you, like the little images and the cutouts and the whole bit.
Oh, yeah. But you did that. So I'm going to try to do it because James is going to have a little baby in his near future. And this time is very important for you.
Yeah, and I don't want to do any damn podcasts for a couple of weeks. I deserve some time off, Dutch. You're a taskmaster. It's on you.
So I may be doing it by myself. So allow me to show my ignorance in doing a podcast. It will be my first attempt, and I'm sure I'll be doing it by the second week anyway. Not next week. I'll be doing it the second week. So, but I hope to see you all here. And I'm going to follow your directions, James, and I hope I can carry it out.
On that basis, we the people.
We the people. See you next Tuesday or next Friday or whenever we're on here again.